That night, when the rain turned Manhattan's alleys into mirrors, Lila Hart signed the wrong contract, and the man she loved tried to erase her from her own company with a single pen stroke. Heartline Systems occupied 3 floors in Midtown, all glass and polished chrome, where the coffee was single origin and the air smelled faintly of leather portfolios. Lila had built it from a dorm room prototype to a $30 million valuation in 6 years. Tonight, though, the 42nd floor corner office felt like a cage with a skyline view. Adrian Black stood by the window, his Brioni suit catching the city lights just so. CFO, fiancé. The man who'd spent 18 months positioning himself as her partner, in boardrooms, in bed, in the carefully curated Instagram posts that made venture capitalists swoon. He'd placed a folder on her desk an hour ago, leather-bound, expensive, the kind that usually held acquisition offers or partnership terms. Just a formality, he'd said too casually. Merger paperwork. Aligns our holdings before the wedding. Lila had learned to read fine print the way some people read sheet music. Clause 7.3 wasn't about alignment. It transferred operational control, her voting shares, her veto rights, her entire decision-making authority, into a joint entity where Adrian held the tiebreaker. The company she'd coded in her pajamas, debugged at 3 a.m., pitched to 17 investors who'd called her sweetheart and ambitious in the same breath, would become his the moment she signed. Her pen hovered. The city stretched below, indifferent. And Adrian smiled. The same smile he'd used when proposing at the charity gala, cameras everywhere, making refusal impossible. Something wrong, babe? Everything. But Lila's voice came out steady. I need a night to review this. His smile thinned. We agreed. No cold feet, she stood, legs unsteady, and reached for her coat. The rain had started, hard diagonal sheets battering the windows. Adrian's hand closed around her wrist. Not rough, just firm. The kind of grip that said, sit back down. Let go. Lila. She twisted free, grabbed her bag, and walked toward the elevator before he could finish the sentence. Her heels clicked too loud on marble. Behind her, Adrian's voice turned sharp. You're being irrational. The elevator doors closed on his face. Lila's reflection stared back, mascara intact, blazer perfect. Panic humming beneath her ribs like a trapped bird. If you've ever felt cornered by someone who claimed to love you, drop a comment and hit subscribe because this story gets darker before it gets light. The rain was worse at street level, vertical, cold soaking through her Burberry trench in seconds. Lila turned east away from the office tower into narrower streets where the tourists didn't venture after dark. Her phone buzzed, Adrian, then again. She powered it down. The sidewalk glistened, slick with runoff and neon reflections from a bodega sign. Lila's heel caught on a storm grate, metal uneven. The city's infrastructure held together with rust and promises. Her ankle rolled. Sharp, immediate, the kind of pain that makes your vision white out for half a second. She grabbed a brick wall for balance, but her other foot slipped. And suddenly she was on her knees in an alley between a dry cleaner and a shuttered pawn shop. Water pooled around her legs. Her ankle throbbed, already swelling. She tried to stand, failed, and felt something close to laughter bubbling up. Hysterical, inappropriate. CEO of a tech company, kneeling in garbage-scented runoff because she couldn't outrun a man in a suit. Ma'am. The voice was low, careful. Brooklyn accent, not Midtown Polish. Lila looked up through rain-blurred vision and saw a man crouched a few feet away, hands visible, non-threatening. Mid-30s maybe? Flannel shirt under a canvas jacket, work boots, dark hair plastered to his forehead. The kind of face you'd cast as the helpful neighbor in a feel-good movie. Square jaw, tired eyes. The faint shadow of someone who'd seen things break and learned to fix them. I'm fine, Lila said automatically, because that's what you say when you're not. You're sitting in a puddle with your ankle the size of a grapefruit, the man said. That's not fine. That's physics. Despite everything, Lila almost smiled. I just need a minute. You need ice in elevation? He glanced at the sky, then back at her. And probably a cab that's never coming in this weather. My daughter and I live 2 blocks over. I've got a first aid kit and a couch. No pressure, but you're gonna hypothermic out here. Lila's instincts, the ones that had navigated investor meetings and acquisition attempts and Adrian's slow-motion betrayal, said danger. Stranger, stupid idea. But her instincts had also said Adrian was safe, and look where that had gotten her. This man had kind eyes. And he'd said daughter, which felt safer somehow, though Lila knew that logic was flawed. I don't even know your name. Rowan Hale. He held out a hand, waited for her to decide. Lila took it. His palm was calloused, warm despite the rain. Lila. Okay, Lila, on 3, I'm gonna help you up. If your ankle won't take weight, I'm carrying you, non-negotiable. She tried. Her ankle screamed. And then Rowan's arms were under her knees and shoulders. Fireman carry. Competent, zero hesitation. And Lila was being lifted like she weighed nothing, even though she'd skipped exactly 0 desserts in the last year, trying to fit into her engagement dress. I can walk, she protested, but it came out weak. Sure you can. Tomorrow. Rowan started moving. Steady steps despite her weight in the rain. June's gonna love this. She's 6. Thinks every person who needs help is a princess in disguise. I'm not a princess. Good. Princesses are high maintenance. They turned a corner. Brooklyn brownstones rose around them, smaller, older, human scale. Rowan climbed 3 steps to a red door, juggled Lila's weight to fish out keys, and shouldered inside. Warm air hit her face. Somewhere a child's voice called out, Daddy! Got a guess, Junebug. Grab the big first aid kit from the bathroom, okay? Footsteps pattered. A small girl appeared, gap-toothed, ponytail askew, wearing pajamas covered in cartoon astronauts. She stared at Lila with the kind of guileless curiosity only 6-year-olds possess. Did she fall down? Yep, and we're gonna fix her up. Can you handle that? June nodded solemnly, then ran off. Rowan carried Lila to a worn couch, plaid, soft, the kind you actually sit on, and set her down with surprising gentleness. The apartment was small, clean, cluttered with evidence of ordinary life. Crayons on the coffee table, a stack of picture books, a plastic dinosaur standing guard by the TV. Lila's world had been glass towers and leather interiors for so long, she'd forgotten rooms could feel like this. Lived in. Safe. Rowan knelt by her ankle, unlaced her heel with careful fingers. This is gonna hurt, sorry. It did. But his hands were steady. And June reappeared with the first aid kit. Oversized, red, clearly designed for wilderness emergencies, chattering about how she'd once twisted her ankle on the monkey bars and Daddy had made her a special sock cast. Rowan wrapped Lila's ankle in an elastic bandage, propped it on a pillow, and handed her a mug of something hot. Ginger tea. Not the expensive kind from Whole Foods, the kind you make from actual ginger root because it's cheaper and works better. You should probably see a doctor tomorrow, Rowan said. But for tonight, you're off it. No arguments, Lila sipped the tea. It burned her tongue, grounded her. Outside, the rain kept falling, and somewhere in Midtown, Adrian was probably calling her phone, leaving voicemails that started polite and ended with the word irrational. But here, in a stranger's living room, with a 6-year-old drawing her a get-well card on construction paper, Lila felt something she hadn't felt in months, like she could breathe. Morning arrived with pale light and the smell of something baking. Lila woke on Rowan's couch, still dressed, ankle still throbbing but manageable, a crocheted blanket tucked around her shoulders. The apartment looked different in daylight, smaller, shabbier, but somehow more solid. June was at the kitchen table coloring, tongue stuck out in concentration. Rowan stood at the stove, flipping what appeared to be pancakes. You stayed, he said without turning around. Statement, not question. You said I couldn't walk. Fair. He plated 3 pancakes, delivered them to June with a kiss on her head, then returned with a plate for Lila. No syrup, he drizzled honey instead and added sliced bananas. House rules. Guests eat breakfast. Non-negotiable. Lila accepted the plate because her stomach was demanding it. The pancakes were good. Not Instagram perfect, but made by someone who'd cooked them 1,000 times and knew exactly when to flip. Her phone, finally powered back on, lit up like a slot machine. 17 missed calls. 12 texts. 3 voicemails. All Adrian. The preview of the last text made her skin cold. Board meeting at noon. Where are you? Bad news? Rowan asked, reading her face. Complicated news. Lila set the phone down. I should go. Thank you for the help, really, but your ankle's still twice normal size. You're not going anywhere on it today. Rowan refilled her tea mug. Look, I don't know your story. Don't need to. But whatever you're running from showed up in your eyes last night, and it's not gone this morning. June looked up from her coloring. Are you hiding from a bad guy? June, Rowan said gently. It's okay. Lila met the girl's eyes, 6 years old and already fluent in the universal language of people who need help. Kind of, yeah. You can stay here, June announced. We have an extra toothbrush, pink. Lila felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, opening. I can't impose like that. It's not imposing if we're offering, Rowan said. Here's the deal. You stay on that couch until your ankle works again. 1 day, maybe 2. You don't talk about whatever you're running from unless you want to. June doesn't bother you during her morning cartoons. She knows the rules. And when you're ready to face whatever's waiting out there, you face it. But you do it on 2 working feet. It was the most reasonable thing anyone had offered Lila in months. No contracts. No leverage. Just basic human decency wrapped in flannel and work boots. Why would you do this for a stranger? Rowan's expression shifted. Something distant, haunted, quickly hidden. Because once I didn't, and I still see that kid's face. The words hung there, heavy with history Lila didn't know, and Rowan clearly wasn't sharing. But she understood the shape of it. Guilt, responsibility, the weight of second chances. Okay, she said. 1 day. Thank you, June cheered. Rowan nodded, then turned back to the stove like it was settled. Lila's phone buzzed again. Adrian, call me now. This is ridiculous. She powered it off and let herself sink into the couch. Outside the window, Brooklyn went about its morning. People walking dogs, opening shops, living lives that didn't revolve around boardrooms and betrayals. For the first time in 18 months, Lila allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to be one of them. The pancakes cooled on her plate. June hummed while coloring. And Rowan washed dishes with the quiet competence of someone who'd been both rescuer and rescuee, and knew the difference. If this story is hitting different, leave a comment letting us know, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Adrian finds her. By afternoon, Lila's ankle had graduated from catastrophic to merely terrible. June had appointed herself chief medical officer, checking the bandage every hour and delivering status reports with the seriousness of a trauma surgeon. Rowan had left for a repair job, something about a broken dishwasher in Park Slope, and returned with takeout dumplings and a pair of crutches he'd borrowed from a guy. You know a guy who just has crutches? Lila asked, former firefighter. We all know guys with medical equipment. Former. That explained the competence, the calm under pressure, the way he'd carried her through the rain without breaking stride. Lila wanted to ask why former, but Rowan's expression suggested that door was closed for now. They ate dumplings from the carton. June insisted on using chopsticks, dropping approximately 60% of her food, and watched a nature documentary about penguins. Lila's phone stayed off. The world outside this apartment felt both urgent and irrelevant. Then someone knocked. 3 sharp raps, official sounding. June looked up. Pizza? Didn't order any. Rowan stood, moved to the door with the same careful competence he brought to everything. Through the peephole, then back to Lila, voice low. You expecting anyone? Lila's stomach dropped. No, another knock. A woman's voice, NYPD, were looking for Lila Hart. The temperature in the room plummeted. June's eyes went wide. Rowan's jaw tightened, and Lila saw him make a decision in real time, the kind you make when someone needs help and walking away isn't an option. He opened the door 6 inches, body blocking the gap. Can I help you? 2 officers stood in the hallway, one older, tired-looking, one younger, sharper. The older one consulted a phone screen. We received a missing person report. Ms. Hart was last seen leaving her office last night. Her fiancé is concerned. I'm not missing. Lila called from the couch, hating how her voice shook. I'm here. The officers looked past Rowan. Lila grabbed the crutches, stood, ankle screaming, and hobbled to the door on sheer stubborn pride. Up close, she could see their expressions shift from concerned to confused. She knew what they saw. CEO in yesterday's clothes, no makeup, standing in a stranger's apartment. Ma'am? The younger officer said carefully. Are you here voluntarily? The question landed like a slap. Yes, I twisted my ankle. This man helped me. That's it. Your fiancé says you've been under stress, that you left a business meeting abruptly. I left my own office after declining to sign paperwork, Lila interrupted. Ice crept into her voice. the same tone that had shut down mansplaining investors and hostile acquisition attempts. I'm 32 years old of sound mind and entitled to spend the night wherever I choose. The older officer held up a hand. Understood. But we need to confirm you're safe. She twisted her ankle in the rain, Rowan said evenly. I'm a former firefighter. I helped. There's no story here. The younger officer's eyes narrowed. And you are? Rowan Hale. This is my daughter June. We gave Ms. Hart first aid and a place to rest. That's called being a decent human. Something shifted. The older officer's expression softened. Recognition, maybe, or respect for the former firefighter detail. He looked at Lila. You want to file a report about anything? Harassment? Anything? Lila hesitated, did she? Adrian hadn't physically harmed her. He'd just tried to steal her company with a signature. That wasn't illegal, just betrayal wrapped in legal language. No, she said finally. But please tell my fiancé I'll contact him when I'm ready. The officers exchanged glances. The older one handed her a card. If you change your mind, or if you need anything, they left. Rowan closed the door, locked it, and turned to face Lila. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the question forming. You don't owe me an explanation, he said. He tried to trick me into signing over my company. The words spilled out before Lila could stop them. 18 months together, and it was all just set up for a merger clause I almost didn't catch. I ran, fell, you found me. And now he's using the police to... Her voice cracked. June appeared from behind the couch where she'd been very conspicuously not listening. She wrapped her small arms around Lila's waist, careful of the ankle, and squeezed. You can stay here forever if you want. Daddy won't let the bad man find you. Rowan met Lila's eyes over his daughter's head. The look said, I won't, but we need a plan, and Lila, who'd built a company from code and caffeine and sheer determination, who'd pitched to rooms full of men who called her ambitious like it was an insult, felt something she'd been missing for months settle back into place. Her spine, her center, the part of her that Adrian had tried to erase with Clause 7.3. Thank you, she told them both, for being decent humans. It's apparently rarer than I thought. Rowan smiled. Small, sad, real. Welcome to Brooklyn. We specialize in rare. Outside, a police cruiser pulled away. Somewhere in Midtown, Adrian was realizing his missing person gambit had failed. And in a modest walk-up smelling of dumplings and crayons, 3 people who'd been strangers 24 hours ago became something else. Not family. Not yet. But the beginning of something that might bloom if given time, water, and the kind of kindness that doesn't come with contracts. 3 days in Rowan's apartment taught Lila things her MBA never covered. That ginger root costs less than ginger tea bags and works better. That June's favorite color was sunset orange, and she would defend this opinion with dissertation-level passion. That Rowan fixed appliances during the day and read thick paperbacks about structural engineering at night, dog-earing pages like someone who'd once dreamed of building things taller than brownstones. Her ankle improved enough to manage stairs. Rowan insisted on accompanying her to a walk-in clinic 6 blocks away, June in tow, chattering about a field trip to the aquarium. The clinic waiting room smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. A nurse called Lila back, x-rayed her ankle, and declared it a grade 2 sprain with instructions for rest, ice, compression, elevation. You're lucky, the nurse said, wrapping a fresh bandage. Another inch and you'd have fractured. Luck. Lila turned the word over in her mind. Lucky to have fallen where Rowan could find her. Lucky June thought strangers were princesses. Lucky Adrian hadn't shown up yet, though yet hung over everything like weather about to turn. They left the clinic as afternoon bled into evening. June wanted pizza. Rowan knew a place, of course he did. 2 blocks over, the kind with checkered tablecloths and a photo of the owner shaking hands with a minor league baseball player from 1987. They slid into a booth. June commandeered the crayons and paper menu, began drawing what she announced was a family portrait. Lila watched the girl work, noticed she'd drawn 3 stick figures, tall, medium, small. The medium one had long hair and wore something that might have been a business suit or might have been a dress. That's you, June said proudly, pointing. You're part of the family now, Rowan intercepted gently. Junebug, Lila's got her own life. She's just visiting, but she likes us. June looked at Lila with the brutal honesty of childhood. Right? I do, Lila said and meant it. Very much. The pizza arrived. Thin crust, too much cheese, perfect. They ate, and Lila let herself pretend for 20 minutes that this was her life. Casual dinners, crayon portraits, a man who asked if she wanted red pepper flakes instead of just assuming. Then her phone buzzed. She'd turned it on that morning finally to message her assistant Clara, a coded text saying she was safe and needed a few days. Clara had responded with a single word, careful. Now the screen lit with a new notification. Not a text. A news alert. TechCrunch. Heartline Systems CEO Lila Hart missing amid mental health concerns. Board considers interim leadership. Lila's vision tunneled. She opened the article with shaking hands. The first paragraph cited anonymous sources close to the situation, describing erratic behavior, refusal to sign routine paperwork, disappearance without notice. The second paragraph quoted Adrian. "We're all deeply worried about Lila. She's been under tremendous pressure. We just want her to get the help she needs." The words were surgical, careful, designed to sound concerned while planting seeds, unstable, erratic, needs help. In 3 sentences, Adrian had reframed her refusal as breakdown, her boundary as symptom. "Lila," Rowan's voice cut through the static. She handed him the phone. Watched his jaw tighten as he read. When he looked up, his eyes held something she recognized from the night they met, the look of someone who'd seen people in crisis and learned to stay calm in the center of it. "That's character. Assassination," he said quietly. "That's strategy." Lila's voice came out flat. "He's setting up a narrative. If I come back, I'm unstable. If I stay away, I'm unfit. Either way, the board gets nervous and Adrian positions himself as the steady hand. Can he do that? He's doing it." Lila felt the old fire kindle in her chest, the one that had fueled all-nighters and investor pitch sessions and the quiet, relentless refusal to let anyone tell her she couldn't. "The board meets Friday, 4 days. If I don't show up, they'll vote him interim control for continuity. And once he's in, he'll find a way to make it permanent." June had stopped coloring. "Are you going to fight the bad man?" Lila looked at the 6-year-old, then at Rowan, then at the cold slice of pizza on her plate. 20 minutes ago, she'd been pretending this life was hers. But it wasn't. She'd built a company from code and vision and sweat, and letting Adrian steal it because she was too bruised to fight back wasn't peace. It was surrender. "Yeah," she said. "I am." "Good." June returned to her drawing, adding what appeared to be a cape to Lila's stick figure. "Princesses always fight bad guys. Daddy told me." Rowan's expression softened. "I said princesses in the good stories fight their own battles." Same thing. They finished the pizza. Rowan paid, refused Lila's money with a look that said arguing would waste everyone's time, and they walked back through Brooklyn streets turning blue with dusk. Lila's ankle ached, but she kept pace, crutches clicking on pavement. At the apartment, June was sent to brush teeth. Rowan made tea, handed Lila a mug, and sat across from her with the careful distance of someone respecting a boundary he'd just watched form. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "I don't have anyone else." The admission cost her. "My board's scared. My team's on NDAs. My friends," she laughed, bitter. "Turns out most of my friends were Adrian's friends first." "You have us." Lila blinked. "You've known me 3 days. June's known you 3 days and already cast you in the family portrait. I'm just slower to commit." Rowan's mouth quirked, almost a smile, not quite. "Look, I don't know corporate warfare, but I know what it looks like when someone's trying to erase you. And I know you don't let that stand." Something unknotted in Lila's chest. Not love, too soon, too complicated. But recognition. The thing that happens when someone sees you clearly and doesn't flinch. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet. We haven't figured out how to beat him." But the "we" hung in the air like a promise. And for the first time since reading that article, Lila felt the shape of a plan beginning to form. Drop a comment if you've ever had someone rewrite your story to make you the villain. And subscribe, because Adrian's about to learn Lila didn't build a tech company by playing nice. Clara showed up the next morning unannounced, efficient, carrying a leather messenger bag and wearing the expression of someone who'd navigated hostile boardrooms as executive assistant for 6 years and developed excellent survival instincts. Rowan opened the door, took one look, and said, "You must be the cavalry." "Clara Reeves." "I work for Lila." She stepped inside, spotted Lila on the couch, and her professional mask cracked just slightly. "Jesus, you actually twisted your ankle," Adrian said. "That I was hysterical and unstable, I know." Lila gestured to the chair. "How bad is it?" Clara sat, pulled out a tablet, and brought up a document. "The board meets Friday at 2 p.m. Adrian's pushing for an emergency vote on interim leadership, citing your unexplained absence and concerning behavior. He's got 3 votes locked: Paulson, Chen, and Whitmore." Lila did the math. 7 board members total. Adrian needed 4 for majority. "What about Marissa and Samir?" "Marissa's waffling. Samir's on your side but wants proof you're competent to lead." His words. Clara's expression turned apologetic. "There's also this," she turned the tablet. "A page 6 article posted 2 hours ago. Tech CEO's secret Brooklyn hideaway. Who's the mystery man?" Someone had photographed them leaving the pizza place. The image was grainy telephoto but clear enough. Lila on crutches, Rowan's hand at her elbow, June skipping ahead. The caption speculated about romantic entanglements and questions about judgment. Rowan leaned over Lila's shoulder reading. His jaw worked. "That's my daughter. They put my daughter in a gossip rag." "I'm sorry." Lila felt nausea rise. "Adrian must have hired someone to—" "It's not your fault." But Rowan's voice had gone cold, the way metal does before it shatters. Clara cleared her throat. "There's a way to flip this. If you show up Friday, composed, prepared, with documentation proving you were handling legitimate business, you control the narrative." Adrian looks paranoid. "The board sees stability." "What documentation?" Lila asked. "Whatever you can manufacture." Clara met her eyes, and Lila saw the calculation there. The assistant who'd learned to think 3 moves ahead because her boss couldn't afford to think only 2. Medical records showing the ankle injury. A paper trail showing you were working remotely. Character witnesses if we can find them. Lila looked at Rowan. He'd gone very still, the way people do when deciding whether to walk toward danger or away from it. "I can provide a witness statement," he said finally. "Former firefighter, clean record. I helped someone who was injured." "That's not scandalous, that's basic decency." "They'll dig into your life," Clara warned. "Former employer, finances, custody arrangements. June's mine full-time. Her mother passed when she was 2. Rowan's tone brooked no argument. "My record's clean. My finances are boring. And if Adrian wants to paint me as some kind of threat, that says more about him than me." June wandered out from the bedroom, still in pajamas, clutching a stuffed giraffe. "Are we helping Lila fight the bad man?" "We're considering it," Rowan said carefully. "We should." June climbed onto the couch next to Lila. "Because she's nice and he's mean, and that's how you know." Clara's professional mask cracked fully into a smile. "Kid's got better instincts than half my former bosses." They spent the next 2 hours strategizing. Clara had smuggled out files, not enough to prove Adrian's Clause 7.3 scheme, but enough to document Lila's competence in recent projects. Medical records from the clinic visit provided official proof of the ankle injury. Rowan drafted a witness statement, clinical and precise, describing the night he'd found Lila and the subsequent first aid. It wasn't enough to destroy Adrian, but it was enough to steady the ground under Lila's feet, and sometimes that's where you start. Clara left at noon with a plan: leak a counter-narrative to a friendly tech journalist, frame Lila's absence as personal medical recovery, position her Friday appearance as return to leadership. Not flashy, just competent. After Clara left, June insisted they all needed brain fuel and assembled peanut butter sandwiches with the focused intensity of a Michelin chef. They ate on the couch watching a cartoon about a girl who solved mysteries with her robot dog. Lila found herself laughing at a joke about hydraulic systems, actually laughing for the first time in days. "You sound different when you laugh," Rowan observed. "Different how?" "Like you mean it." Lila considered that. Adrian used to compliment her laugh, but it had always felt like a performance review. "Good laugh, very natural, keep it up." This felt like Rowan had just noticed she was human and found it worth mentioning. "I haven't had much to laugh about lately," she admitted. "Then we'll need to work on that." He stood, collected plates. "June, show Lila your aquarium drawings. I'm told the jellyfish are very accurate." June needed no further encouragement. She dragged out a folder of construction paper art. narrating each piece with the solemnity of a gallery curator. Lila listened, asked questions, and felt something she'd been missing since before Adrian, before the company, before the treadmill of ambition had convinced her that rest was just failure in comfortable shoes. She felt present. Here. Real. Outside, Brooklyn moved through its afternoon. Somewhere in Midtown, Adrian was planning his next move. In 4 days, Lila would walk into that boardroom and reclaim what was hers. But right now, she was learning about jellyfish anatomy from a 6-year-old, and that felt like the most important work in the world. June fell asleep at 8:30, worn out from being a tour guide to her entire artistic catalog. Rowan carried her to bed. She weighed nothing, all sprawled limbs and trusting weight, and returned to find Lila at the window, staring at the Brooklyn skyline. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. "I'm thinking they're worth at least a nickel." But Lila smiled, "Just wondering how I ended up here. 3 months ago, I was on the cover of Forbes 30 Under 30. Tonight, I'm hiding in Brooklyn, planning a boardroom battle with an assistant, a firefighter, and a 6-year-old. Former firefighter. Why former? The question hung between them. Rowan moved to the small kitchen, poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle that looked like it had been opened exactly once. He handed Lila one, kept the other. 3 years ago, he said, there was a fire in Red Hook. Warehouse conversion, luxury condos, faulty wiring. I went in with my crew and we cleared 8 units. The 9th had a woman and her daughter, maybe 7 years old. I got the kid out first because that's protocol. Went back for the mother." He stopped. Sipped whiskey. Lila waited, stairs collapsed. I fell through to the basement. Broke 3 ribs, punctured a lung. They pulled me out, but by the time I got back up, the 9th floor was gone. So was the mother. His voice stayed level, but his knuckles were white around the glass. The kid I saved spent 6 months in foster care before an aunt claimed her. I kept tabs, wasn't supposed to, but I did. She's okay now. Good school, stable home, but you still see her face, Lila said quietly. Every time I close my eyes. Rowan looked at her. The department cleared me, said I did everything right, offered desk duty, then early retirement with full benefits. I took the retirement because I couldn't. He broke off. June was 3. Her mother had just died cancer. 6 months of watching her disappear, and I couldn't go back into burning buildings knowing she might lose me too. Lila felt the weight of it, the cost of that choice, the guilt that came with surviving, the impossible math of deciding whose life mattered more. So you fix appliances, she said. I fix things that stay fixed. Dishwashers, refrigerators, boilers. Nobody dies if I screw up, they just don't have hot water for a day. He smiled, bitter. It's smaller, but it's something I can do without June becoming an orphan. She's lucky to have you. She's stuck with me. There's a difference. Lila turned the whiskey glass in her hands. The amber caught the light, refracted it into small warm stars. The night you found me, she said, you told the police you helped because once you didn't. You meant that kid's mother. Yeah. You can't save everyone, Rowan. I know. Doesn't stop me from trying. He met her eyes. What about you? What's your couldn't save story? Lila hadn't expected the question. Hadn't expected it to hurt. My father, she said finally. He had a small tech repair shop in Newark. The kind where people brought broken laptops and phones and he'd fix them while they waited. He taught me to code when I was 12. Said computers were logical and if you understood the logic you could fix anything. Smart man. He was. He also trusted the wrong business partner, who embezzled $70,000 and left my dad holding the debt. The shop closed. He had a heart attack 6 months later. I was 19, sophomore year at MIT. Lila's throat tightened. I built Heartline Systems because I wanted to prove you could be smart and successful without trusting the wrong person. And then I met Adrian and did exactly what my father did. Trusted someone who saw me as a resource to extract. Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then, but you caught it. Before you signed. Barely. Barely's enough. Your dad would be proud. The words shouldn't have landed as hard as they did. Lila blinked against sudden heat in her eyes. You don't know that. I know he taught you to code because computers were logical. And I know you built a company that employs 100 people and survived 18 months with a guy trying to steal it without you noticing. That's not luck, that's your father's logic running in your veins. Rowan set his glass down. So yeah, I think he'd be proud. Lila didn't trust herself to speak. Instead, she reached into her bag, the one she'd grabbed the night she fled, still carrying it like a talisman, and pulled out a small object. A circuit board no bigger than her palm, mounted in a lucite frame. Scratched old, soldered by hand. First thing I ever built, she said. LED flashlight. I was 13. My dad kept it on his desk until the day the shop closed. Rowan took it carefully, held it up to the light. The solder joints were clumsy, childish, but the circuits were sound. Does it still work? I don't know. I've never tried. Mind if I do? Lila nodded. Rowan disappeared into the kitchen, returned with a 9-volt battery and a small clip. He attached the leads and the LED flickered, then glowed. Steady, warm, still working after 19 years. There you go, he said softly. Still fighting. Lila looked at the light. At this man who fixed things for a living because he couldn't save everyone. At the small apartment that smelled like ginger tea and crayons and quiet, unperformed decency. And she felt something shift. Not love, not yet. But the beginning of trust, which is sometimes harder and always more important. Thank you, she said, for all of this. You're welcome. Rowan handed back the circuit board, the light still glowing. Now get some sleep. Friday's coming and you've got a bad guy to fight. Lila smiled. Real. Tired, grateful, and for the first time in months, she believed she might actually win. If someone's ever seen you clearly when you couldn't see yourself, drop a comment and subscribe, because Lila's about to remind everyone exactly who built Heartline Systems. Thursday morning brought rain again, softer this time, the kind that mists rather than drowns. Lila woke to the smell of coffee and found a note on the table. Repair job in Queens. Back by 3, help yourself to breakfast. Arjun was still asleep. The apartment held that particular quiet of spaces where people trust you enough to leave you alone in them. Lila made toast, checked her email, and found a message from Clara. Journalist took the bait. Article drops tonight. You're recovering from a minor injury while continuing remote work oversight. Clean. The counter-narrative was live. Now they just needed Lila to survive the boardroom. She spent the morning reviewing files, rehearsing answers to questions Adrian would raise, building the case for her own competence. It felt surreal, having to prove she deserved to run the company she'd built. But this was the game, and she'd been playing it long enough to know the rules. At 2 p.m., Rowan returned, soaked despite his jacket. He shook off rain like a dog, grinned when June complained he was making puddles, and changed into dry clothes. June demanded hot chocolate. Rowan made it from scratch, real cocoa, milk, honey, and poured 3 mugs without asking if Lila wanted one. They sat at the small kitchen table, the 3 of them, and June recounted a dream about robot penguins with encyclopedic detail. Lila listened, asked questions, and realized with a start that this felt more like family than 18 months of charity galas with Adrian ever had. Lila? June was looking at her expectantly. Sorry, what? I asked if you're gonna win tomorrow. Lila glanced at Rowan. He was watching her with that quiet, steady attention she'd come to recognize, not pressure, just presence. I'm gonna try, she said, but are you gonna win? June, Rowan said gently, sometimes trying is all you... I'm going to win. Lila's voice came out stronger than she felt. Because the alternative is letting someone steal something I built, and I didn't survive this week to roll over now. June nodded, satisfied. Good. When you win, you should come back and tell us, so we can celebrate. June, Lila might be busy. I will, Lila interrupted, looked at Rowan, then at June. When I win, I'll come back and tell you, promise. Something flickered in Rowan's expression. Surprise maybe, or hope. He covered it by sipping hot chocolate, but Lila had seen it and it mattered. They spent the afternoon in low-key preparation. Clara arrived at 4 with a garment bag. Lila's favorite suit, pressed and perfect, smuggled out of her apartment. Also shoes, makeup, the armor of corporate warfare. They ran through potential questions, hostile scenarios, the nuclear option if Adrian tried to blindside her with Clause 7.3 in public. At 6, Clara left. June was dispatched to brush teeth, and Rowan walked Lila to the door, not out, just to it, giving her space to decide what came next. You've got this, he said. You don't know that. I know you. He said it simply, like it was obvious. I've watched you plan this for 3 days. You're strategic, stubborn, and smarter than everyone in that boardroom combined. Adrian's betting you'll be too scared to show up. Prove him wrong. Lila felt something crack in her chest. Good crack, the kind that lets light in. Why are you so sure? Because you fixed that circuit board when you were 13 and it still works. You build things that last, he held her gaze. He doesn't. The words settled into her bones, steadying. Lila stepped forward, not thinking, just moving, and hugged him. Rowan went still for half a second, then his arms came up, careful and warm, holding her like she was something that mattered. Thank you, she whispered against his shoulder. He smelled like rain and coffee and laundry detergent, and it was the safest she'd felt since the night she'd run. You're welcome. He stepped back, hands lingering on her shoulders for just a moment. Now go get some sleep. You've got a company to reclaim. Lila smiled, and it felt real. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. She settled back onto the couch, her spot now, pillow and blanket waiting. Through the wall, she heard Rowan reading June a bedtime story, his voice low and gentle. Outside, the rain softened to mist, then stopped. Tomorrow, she'd walk into that boardroom and face Adrian and the board, and the weight of her own reputation hanging in the balance. But tonight, she'd been hugged by a man who fixed dishwashers and seen by a girl who drew family portraits in sunset orange. And that felt like power of a different kind. The kind that didn't come with contracts or clauses or buyout offers. The kind you couldn't steal. Friday morning arrived cold and sharp. The kind of October day that promised winter. Lila dressed in Rowan's bathroom. The suit Clara had brought, heels that made her ankle twinge but held steady. Makeup applied with the precision of war paint. When she emerged, June stared with wide eyes. You look like a superhero, the girl announced. I feel like I'm going to throw up, Lila admitted. Superheroes throw up sometimes. Daddy told me? Rowan, pouring coffee into a travel mug, shot his daughter a look. I said heroes get scared. I didn't mention vomiting. Same thing. Lila accepted the coffee, grateful. Her phone showed 9:47 a.m. The board meeting started at 2. Clara would meet her at Hartline's office at 1:30. She had 4 hours to not fall apart. You want company on the subway? Rowan asked. Lila almost said yes. But showing up with Rowan would feed the page 6 narrative, the one Adrian had carefully seeded about concerning judgment and romantic entanglements. She needed to walk in alone. Composed, undeniably competent. I'll be okay, she said. But thank you. June hugged her, fierce, sudden, smelling like syrup and strawberry shampoo. Beat the bad man. I will. Rowan walked her to the door, handed her the travel mug, then something else. The lucite-framed circuit board, the LED still glowing faintly from yesterday's battery. For luck, he said. Rowan, this is yours, and it still works. Remember that when Adrian tries to tell you otherwise. Lila slipped it into her bag, touched his hand briefly, and left before the gratitude in her throat turned into something embarrassing. The subway was crowded, anonymous. She stood pressed between strangers, holding the overhead rail, feeling the suit jacket sharp against her shoulders. At 34th Street, she switched to the Express. At 42nd, she climbed to street level and walked the last 6 blocks, relearning the rhythm of Midtown, fast, expensive, indifferent. Heartline Systems building rose 42 stories, glass and steel, and Lila felt the weight of it as she entered the lobby. The security guard, Marcus, 23, studying for the LSAT on night shifts, looked up and froze. Ms. Hart, you're back. I am. Everything okay, Marcus? He hesitated. There have been some changes. Mr. Black moved his office to the executive floor, and some people have been asking about you. What people? Lawyers. And a reporter yesterday asking if you still worked here. Lila's stomach tightened. Adrian wasn't just controlling the board narrative, he was building a legal case, painting her as absent, unstable, unfit, which meant he had something planned for the meeting beyond a simple vote. Thank you for the heads up, she told Marcus. He nodded, looked like he wanted to say more, but just handed her a visitor badge. Your keycard's been deactivated. This'll get you to 42, deactivated. While she'd been gone a week, Adrian had erased her access to her own company. Lila took the badge, rode the elevator to 42, and stepped into the executive suite she'd designed. Everything looked the same. Exposed brick, standing desks, the wall of patents and press features. But it felt different, occupied by something hostile. Clara met her in the hallway, face pale. "We have a problem." "How bad?" "Adrian filed paperwork this morning. Emergency petition for mental competency evaluation, citing erratic behavior and abandonment of fiduciary duty." Clara's voice shook. "If the board votes yes, you're locked out until a court-appointed psychiatrist clears you, which could take weeks." Lila's vision grayed at the edges. This was the nuclear option, the one she'd feared but hadn't quite believed Adrian would deploy. It was legal barely, if the board could be convinced she was a danger to the company's stability. What do we need to block it? 4 board votes against. Or documentation proving competence so clear they won't risk the liability of approving it. "I have medical records." "Your statement." "Rowan's witness account." "It's not enough." Clara pulled out her tablet, hands shaking. "I borrowed Adrian's email last night. He has affidavits from 3 Heartline employees claiming you've been volatile and unreliable for months. One describes you throwing a stapler in a meeting. I've never thrown a stapler in my life, I know. But he's got signatures, dates, HR file references. It looks real." Lila felt the floor tilt. Adrian hadn't just planned to steal her company. He'd been building the case for months, collecting false testimony, manufacturing a paper trail that painted her as unfit. And she'd been so focused on Clause 7.3 that she'd missed the bigger trap. "Can we prove they're lying?" "Not by 2 p.m. Clara's eyes were wet. "Lila, I'm sorry. I should have. This isn't your fault." Lila gripped her assistant's shoulder. "It's his, and we're not done yet." But privately, she felt the architecture of her defense crumbling. Walking into that boardroom had been risky. Walking in with Adrian holding forged affidavits and a competency petition was suicide. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number, saw the counter article. "Nice try. See you at 2. Adrian gloating because he'd already won, and they both knew it. Lila looked at Clara, at the visitor badge Marcus had given her, at the hallway she'd walked 1,000 times when it was still hers, and she made a decision. "I need to access the server room," she said. "Your keycard is deactivated, but yours isn't. And I built the system architecture for this company. If Adrian's been forging documents and planting false testimony, there'll be evidence in the metadata, file creation dates, IP addresses, edit logs." Clara's eyes widened. We can and we will, because I'm not letting him erase me with fake affidavits and a competency petition. He wants to play dirty? Let's see how dirty his hands actually are." For a long moment, Clara just stared. Then she pulled out her keycard, handed it over, and smiled. Small, sharp, dangerous. "Server room's on 41. You've got 90 minutes before the meeting. Make them count." Lila took the keycard, slipped it into her pocket, and headed for the stairs. Behind her, Clara called softly, "Lila, burn him. Count on it. If you've ever had to fight dirty to protect something you built, drop a comment and subscribe, because the next hour is going to get very interesting." The server room hummed with the white noise of cooling fans and blinking status lights. Lila sat at a terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard, accessing systems she'd architected, when Heartline was 3 people in a co-working space in a dream that wouldn't let her sleep. She started with the HR files Adrian had cited in his affidavits. Found them quickly. 3 employee statements dated over the past 4 months describing incidents of erratic behavior. The stapler throwing incident, allegedly witnessed by 2 junior developers. A screaming match with a vendor, supposedly overheard by the office manager. A tearful breakdown in the ladies' room, comforted by an intern. All fiction. But the metadata told a different story. Lila pulled the file properties, cross-referenced creation timestamps with IP address logs, and felt cold certainty settle in her chest. All 3 statements had been created on the same day, 6 days ago, Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m., from Adrian's office workstation. Not over 4 months. Not by the employees listed. By Adrian all at once, backdating the files and forging signatures. She screenshot everything, dumped the logs to a secure cloud drive Clara could access, and kept digging. Adrian's email server was next. She shouldn't have had access. Her admin credentials should have been revoked when her keycard was deactivated. But Adrian had made a critical mistake. He'd kept her listed as a system architect for compliance purposes, and that clearance level superseded individual account locks. Lila pulled his sent folder from the past 3 months. Found the smoking gun in an email thread from 6 weeks ago, sent to a shell company called Meridian Holdings LLC. Subject: Heartline Transition, Phase 2 Gerald, Clause 7.3 is drafted and ready. Once she signs, operational control transfers immediately. I've structured it as a merger formality, buried in page 43 of the partnership agreement. She won't catch it, she trusts me. If she balks, we move to Phase 2 Competency Challenge. I've been documenting concerning behavior through informal channels. 3 affidavits from employees, compensated for cooperation, will establish pattern. Board will have no choice but to approve evaluation, which buys us 4 to 6 weeks to secure interim control. Once I'm in, we execute the IP transfer to Meridian per our earlier agreement. You'll have full access to the Heartline codebase and client list within 90 days. My 40% stake in Meridian remains confidential per the NDA. This works because she believes I love her. Attachment is exploitable. Adrian Lila read it twice, then a third time, because the words were so calculatedly cruel that her brain struggled to process them as real. Attachment is exploitable. 18 months. Meeting his parents at Thanksgiving. The engagement ring he'd presented at a gala where saying no would have been professional suicide. The way he'd held her after her keynote at TechCrunch Disrupt, whispering that he was proud of her, that they were building something beautiful together. All of it. Every moment, every intimacy, every whispered promise had been phase 1 of a corporate theft scheme. She screenshot the email thread. Found 10 more like it. Documented the shell company structure. Traced Meridian Holdings to a Cayman Islands registration with Adrian listed as 40% equity holder. Found wire transfer records showing payments to the 3 employees who'd provided affidavits. $5,000 each marked as consulting fees. It was enough. More than enough. Evidence that would destroy him in any boardroom, any courtroom, any context where truth still mattered. Lila saved everything to the cloud drive, then to a backup USB drive she'd found in a drawer. She was reaching for her phone to text Clara when the server room door opened. Adrian stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 security guards Lila didn't recognize. Not Marcus, these were new. Hired in the past week, loyal to whoever was paying them. Lila. Adrian's voice was smooth, concerned, the same tone he'd used when proposing. I was worried you might try something like this. You forged affidavits. Lila stood pocketing the USB drive. And you've been planning to steal my company for 6 months minimum. It's all here. Emails, wire transfers, the shell company structure. Is meaningless without context. Adrian stepped into the room and the guards moved with him. Not threatening, but present. You've been under enormous stress. You disappeared for a week, moved in with a stranger, refused to communicate. The board is already concerned about your judgment. And now you're accessing confidential files without authorization, making wild accusations about forged documents. He was reframing in real time, spinning the narrative so cleanly that Lila could see how it would play in the boardroom. Her evidence would become paranoia. His theft would become her instability. The metadata doesn't lie, she said. Metadata can be misinterpreted by someone looking for conspiracy. Adrian smiled, the same smile she'd once found charming, now revealing itself as the expression of a predator who'd already won. The board meets in 40 minutes. You can come to that meeting and present your evidence, and I'll present mine. 3 sworn affidavits from employees you work with every day, versus emails you claim I sent but could easily have been fabricated by someone with system architect access. I didn't fabricate anything. I know, but they don't. And you've been gone a week, injured, staying with a man nobody's vetted, refusing to communicate. Who do you think they'll believe? The trap closed. Lila felt it lock into place, the geometry of his plan finally visible in full. He'd isolated her, damaged her credibility, positioned himself as the steady hand, and now held a competency petition that would freeze her out regardless of what evidence she brought. You can't do this, she said, but her voice shook. I already have. Adrian gestured to the guards. Escort Ms. Hart to the conference room. Gently. We're all very concerned about her well-being. The guards moved forward, not rough, but inexorable. Lila looked at the terminal, at the server banks holding 6 years of her work, at the man she'd trusted enough to let into her code, her company, her bed. Why? The question came out raw. You could have just asked for equity. For a real partnership, why steal it? Adrian's expression shifted. Just for a second, the mask slipping to reveal something cold and satisfied underneath. Because you would have said no. You always do. My company, my vision, my code. You built something worth taking. Lila, that's not a crime, it's a compliment. Then the mask was back and he was holding the door open, waiting for her to walk through it like a condemned prisoner approaching the scaffold. Lila went. Not because she'd given up, but because the only way out was through. The USB drive felt like a coal in her pocket. Burning, impossible to ignore, not yet enough. They walked to the conference room in silence. Through the glass walls, Lila could see the board assembling. Paulson, Chen Whitmore, Marissa Samir, the CFO Karen, and the lead investor Davis. 7 people who would decide whether she kept her company or lost everything. Adrian opened the door. The board looked up, and Lila walked in with her spine straight and her evidence hidden and the certain knowledge that she was about to fight the most important battle of her life with a weapon her opponent had already convinced everyone was imaginary. Clara stood in the corner, tablet clutched to her chest, eyes wide with hope and terror. Lila met her gaze and nodded once. I got it now, they just had to make it matter. The conference room smelled like leather and expensive coffee. Adrian took his seat at the head of the table, Lila's seat, the one she'd occupied for 6 years, and arranged his papers with the calm of someone who'd already won. Thank you all for coming on short notice, he began. As you know, Lila's been absent from leadership for the past week, following concerning behavior at our last executive meeting. I've filed a petition for temporary mental competency evaluation, purely out of concern for both Lila's well-being and the company's stability. Marissa Chen shifted uncomfortably. Samir frowned. The others watched Lila with expressions ranging from pity to suspicion. Lila, Paulson said carefully, do you want to address Adrian's concerns? I do. Lila stood, ignoring the twinge in her ankle. She pulled out the USB drive, held it up. This contains emails from Adrian's server detailing a 6-month plan to steal operational control of Heartline systems through contract manipulation and forged employee affidavits. It also contains wire transfer records showing payments to employees in exchange for false testimony, and documentation of a shell company called Meridian Holdings, where Adrian holds 40% equity, the entity he planned to transfer Heartline's intellectual property to once he secured control. Silence. Adrian's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened against the table. That's a serious accusation, Davis said slowly. It's a paranoid fantasy, Adrian countered smoothly. Lila has system architect access. She could fabricate emails, backdate files, create any narrative she wants. The metadata she's citing could easily be manipulated by someone with her clearance level. Metadata can be verified by independent forensic analysis, Lila shot back, which takes weeks. Meanwhile, we have 3 sworn affidavits from current employees describing months of erratic behavior. Adrian slid folders across the table. These were submitted to HR over the past 4 months, documenting incidents that raised red flags. Marissa opened one, read it, looked at Lila. This says you threw a stapler at a developer in August. I've never thrown a stapler. Lila's voice stayed level. Those affidavits were all created last Tuesday at 9:47 a.m. from Adrian's workstation. The metadata proves it, and the employees listed were paid $5,000 each through wire transfers I can document. Or, Adrian said gently, someone with administrator access altered the metadata to frame me because she's desperate to avoid accountability for genuine mental health concerns. It was perfect circular logic. Every piece of evidence Lila presented could be reframed as proof of her instability. She could see it in the board's faces. Doubt creeping in, the safer narrative becoming more attractive. Clara cleared her throat from the corner. I'd like to submit additional evidence. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Ms. Reeves, you're not a board member. She's a witness, Samir interrupted. Let her speak. Clara stepped forward, tablet out. I've worked as Lila's executive assistant for 6 years. I've attended every meeting, read every email, managed every calendar. In that time, I have never witnessed the behavior described in these affidavits. No stapler throwing. No screaming matches. No breakdowns. You're loyal to her. Whitmore said. Your testimony is biased. My testimony is based on 6 years of direct observation, Clara corrected. But if you want objective validation, I've also pulled the building's keycard logs and security footage for the dates cited in these affidavits. She brought up a spreadsheet on the room's display screen. The stapler incident allegedly occurred August 14th at 3:30 p.m. in the development lab. But Lila's keycard shows she was off-site that entire afternoon, attending the TechCrunch panel, verified by published photos and video. The room went very still. Clara pulled up another screen. The vendor screaming match allegedly happened September 3rd in the main office. Security footage from that day shows Lila in back-to-back meetings from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., none involving vendors. The office manager listed as a witness called in sick that day. HR records confirm it. And the bathroom breakdown? Marissa asked quietly. September 19th, allegedly witnessed by an intern named Ashley. Chen except Ashley's employment contract shows she started. September 23rd, she wasn't even working. Here when the incident allegedly occurred. The evidence landed like stones into still water, each one creating ripples that spread and connected. Adrian's face had gone carefully blank, the expression of someone realizing their perfect trap had a flaw. You fabricated these affidavits, Samir said, looking at Adrian. Not a question. An accusation. I did not. Then explain how 3 different employees witnessed events that didn't happen on days when the witnesses weren't present. Samir's voice turned sharp. Explain the wire transfers. Explain Meridian Holdings. You owe this board the truth. Davis stood, and Lila recognized the shift, the lead investor, the man who'd funded Heartline's Series A taking control. We're going to pause this meeting. Adrian, I'm recommending you retain legal counsel. Lila, I'm recommending you provide your evidence to our corporate attorney for independent verification. We reconvene in 2 hours. That's not necessary, Adrian tried. It absolutely is. Davis's tone brooked no argument. Because if even half of what Ms. Hart and Ms. Reeves are alleging is true, you've committed fraud, forgery, and attempted corporate theft. And this board will not be complicit in covering it up. Adrian stood, grabbed his briefcase, and for the first time Lila saw genuine fear flicker across his face. You're making a mistake. I built this company alongside her. No, Lila said quietly. I built this company. You just tried to steal it. He left without another word, the door closing behind him with a soft final click. The board sat in stunned silence. Then Marissa turned to Lila. I owe you an apology. We all do. You owed me trust, Lila corrected, but I'll settle for justice. Davis gestured for the USB drive. Our counsel will verify everything. If your evidence holds, and I believe it will, Adrian Black will never work in this industry again. And you'll have your company back uncontested. Lila handed over the drive, felt the weight of it leave her hand. 6 months of betrayal, distilled into gigabytes of irrefutable proof. Clara moved to her side, squeezed her hand briefly. You did it. We did it. Lila looked at her assistant, at the board members who were finally seeing clearly, at the conference room she'd designed when Heartline was just a dream and a prototype. Now let's finish it. If you've ever had to prove the truth when everyone believed the lie, drop a comment and subscribe, because we're about to close this story the right way. The corporate attorney arrived within 30 minutes, Gloria Tan, senior partner at Whitfield & Associates, the firm that had handled Heartline's incorporation and every major legal action since. She was 60, precise, and famous for evisceration disguised as politeness. Gloria took the USB drive, disappeared into a private office with a forensic tech, and returned 90 minutes later with a printed report thicker than a phone book. The board reconvened. Adrian had returned, lawyer in tow, a young associate from some white shoe firm already sweating despite the air conditioning. Gloria stood at the head of the table, reading, glasses perched on her nose. I've completed preliminary forensic analysis of Ms. Hart's evidence. The findings are unambiguous. She opened the report. The 3 employee affidavits submitted by Mr. Black were created on Tuesday, October 1st at 9:47 a.m. from his office workstation, IP address 192.168.1.47. File properties were manually altered to backdate creation timestamps, but the metadata logs retained by our server architecture which Ms. Hart designed with redundancy protocols specifically to prevent this kind of tampering, show the true origin. Adrian's lawyer started to object. Gloria raised a hand. The emails between Mr. Black and Meridian Holdings LLC are authentic. I've verified the mail server headers, encryption keys, and routing logs. These are not fabrications. The wire transfers to the 3 employees listed as witnesses are confirmed by bank records I've subpoenaed under emergency discovery provisions. Each received exactly $5,000, transferred from a Meridian Holdings account controlled by Mr. Black, on the same day the affidavits were created. She turned a page. Additionally, the contract clause Ms. Hart refused to sign, clause 7.3 of the proposed partnership merger agreement, would have transferred full operational control of Heartline Systems to a joint entity where Mr. Black held tiebreaker authority. This was not disclosed as a control transfer in the summary documents provided to Ms. Hart. By any standard of corporate law, this constitutes attempted fraud. The room was silent. Adrian sat frozen, his lawyer scribbling notes that wouldn't matter. Gloria removed her glasses. It is my recommendation that this board immediately terminate Mr. Black's employment and officer position for cause, pursue criminal charges for fraud and forgery, and issue a company-wide statement clarifying that Ms. Hart's absence was due to a minor medical injury, not instability or incompetence. Anything less would expose this board to shareholder liability. Davis nodded. All in favor of terminating Adrian Black for cause? 7 hands rose. Unanimous. Motion carries. Davis looked at Adrian. You're fired. You have 30 minutes to collect personal items under security escort. Your company email access and credentials are revoked effective immediately. Our counsel will be in touch regarding criminal proceedings. Adrian's face went white, then red. He stood, knocking his chair back. You're making a mistake. Lila can't run this company. She's too emotional, too attached to legacy tech, too competent? Lila interrupted. Her voice was ice. Too smart to fall for your Clause 7.3 trap? Too thorough to miss your fake affidavits? Which part of 2 bothers you most, Adrian? You needed me, he hissed. The board knows it. The investors know it. You're a coder, not a businessman. I'm a founder who built a $30 million company from a dorm room prototype while you were working at a mid-tier investment bank, getting coffee for partners who didn't remember your name. Lila stepped closer and Adrian actually backed up. I didn't need you. I just made the mistake of trusting you. That ends now. Ms. Hart, Gloria said calmly, do you wish to pursue criminal charges? Lila looked at Adrian, really looked at him, seeing clearly for the first time the small grasping thing beneath the expensive suits and practiced charm. He'd tried to erase her, to steal the things she'd built with her father's logic running in her veins, to reduce her to a cautionary tale about women who trusted the wrong men. He'd failed. Yes, she said. Fraud, forgery, attempted theft. File everything, Adrian's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Adrian shook him off, grabbed his briefcase, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. You'll regret this, he said. I regret meeting you, Lila corrected. This is just justice, he left. 2 security guards, the real ones, Marcus's colleagues, followed him out to ensure he took only what belonged to him and nothing of what belonged to Heartline. The room exhaled. Marissa laughed, slightly hysterical. Samir rubbed his face. Davis looked at Lila with something that might have been respect or might have been relief. Welcome back. Ms. Hart, he said. Thank you. Lila sat down in her chair, at the head of the table where she belonged. Now let's talk about the TechCrunch acquisition offer I've been quietly negotiating for the past 3 months. Because we're not just surviving this. We're growing from it. The meeting continued for another hour. Strategy, messaging, the press release that would go out within minutes explaining Adrian's termination, and Lila's return to full leadership. Clara handled the logistics, moving with the quiet competence of someone who'd been ready for this moment. At 5 p.m., the board adjourned. Gloria filed criminal charges with the DA's office. The press release hit TechCrunch, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal simultaneously. Heartline Systems CEO returns to leadership following discovery of internal fraud scheme. Lila stood in her office, 42nd floor, corner view, the city spreading below in golden late-afternoon light, and felt the weight of the past week finally lift. Her phone buzzed. Text from Clara. You did it. Now go tell your family. Lila smiled, grabbed her bag, and headed for the elevator. She had a promise to keep. Brooklyn at dusk looked different. Warmer, softer, more like home than Midtown ever had. Lila walked the 6 blocks from the subway to Rowan's building, ankle holding steady, heels clicking on pavement that smelled like rain and fallen leaves. She climbed the 3 steps to the red door and knocked. June answered, still in school clothes, face lighting up. You're back. Did you win? I won. The girl shrieked, launched herself at Lila's waist, and hugged with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of 6-year-olds who haven't learned to hide their feelings. Rowan appeared from the kitchen, dish towel over his shoulder, and his smile was quiet, relieved, real. Told you, he said. You did. Lila stepped inside, let the door close behind her. Adrian's fired, facing criminal charges and permanently banned from every tech company that values its reputation. The board apologized. My company's mine again, and I'm exhausted. Sit. Rowan guided her to the couch, her spot, pillow still there. I'm making pasta. June, set an extra plate. June ran off, chattering about how she'd told everyone at school that Lila was fighting a bad man and winning, because that's what princesses do. Rowan returned to the kitchen, and Lila watched him work, chopping garlic, heating olive oil, moving with the same steady competence he brought to everything. You could have stayed in Manhattan, he said without turning around. Celebrated with the board, done interviews, reclaimed your empire. I promised I'd come back and tell you. Lila pulled the circuit board from her bag. The LED had finally died, battery spent. You were right. I build things that last. He didn't. Rowan plated pasta, added fresh basil, carried 3 servings to the table. They ate like family, passing Parmesan, arguing about whether penguins could breathe underwater. June insisted they could despite all evidence, laughing at nothing in particular. After dinner, June drew a new family portrait, this one with Lila wearing a cape and holding a sword because that's what you look like when you won. Rowan made tea, and Lila sat in the small apartment that had sheltered her when she'd had nowhere else to go, feeling something settle into place. What happens now? Rowan asked. I run my company. You fix dishwashers. June conquers first grade. Lila sipped tea. And maybe, if you're interested, we figure out what this is. She gestured between them. The thing that had started with an alleyway rescue and grown into trust, into chosen family, into the beginning of something that didn't have a name yet, but felt true. Rowan set down his mug. I'm interested. Good. Because I'm going to be terrible at this. I work 80-hour weeks. I'm married to my code. And I just spent 6 months in a relationship with someone who was systematically stealing from me, so my judgment is questionable. My late wife used to say I was emotionally constipated, Rowan offered, and I've got a 6-year-old who will absolutely insert herself into every moment we try to have alone. So we're even. Lila laughed, real, exhausted, happy. This is a terrible foundation for a relationship. Or a perfect one. Depends on the blueprint. I'm good at blueprints. I know. Rowan reached across the couch, took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused, steady. So take your time, build it right. June appeared from the bedroom in pajamas, dragging her stuffed giraffe. Are you staying over, Lila? Not tonight, Junebug, but I'll be back. Promise? Promise. Lila stayed another hour. Stories, tea, the comfortable silence of people who'd been through fire together and come out the other side. At 8:30, she called a car, hugged June goodnight, and let Rowan walk her to the door. Thank you, she said, for everything. You're welcome. He kissed her forehead, brief, chaste, full of promise. See you soon? See you soon. Lila rode back to Manhattan, to her apartment, 23rd floor, minimalist and pristine and suddenly too empty. She unpacked the circuit board, set it on her desk, and stared at the LED that had finally burned out after 19 years. Then she grabbed her laptop, opened a new document and started writing. Not code this time. A plan. For Solace House, the idea that had been growing since that first night in Brooklyn, when a stranger had carried her to safety and asked nothing in return. A place for women fleeing situations like hers. Not a shelter, a refuge. Somewhere with ginger tea and crayon drawings and people who understood that starting over wasn't weakness, it was architecture. She'd fund it with part of her Heartline equity. Rowan could teach repairs and gardening. June could be the official greeter. And women who'd been told they were too emotional, too unstable, too much by people trying to steal their power could rest, repair, and remember who they were before the world tried to tell them otherwise. Lila wrote until midnight until the plan had shape and bones and a name. Then she sent it to Clara with a note. New project. Let's build something that lasts. The response came immediately. Hell yes. Outside, Manhattan glittered. Expensive, indifferent, full of people fighting their own battles. But in Brooklyn, a 6-year-old slept with a crayon portrait of her chosen family. A former firefighter read about structural engineering and thought about second chances. And a CEO who'd almost lost everything learned that sometimes the best foundations aren't built in boardrooms. They're built in small apartments that smell like ginger tea, by people who carry strangers out of the rain because it's the right thing to do. Lila closed her laptop, picked up the dead circuit board, and smiled. Her father had taught her that if you understood the logic, you could fix anything. Turned out he was right. Not just about circuits, about everything. What would you have done? If someone tried to steal the thing you built? Drop a comment and let us know. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Because sometimes the best endings are really just beginnings.